So that leads us to the plan. And the plan really has three cornerstone aspects. It's nutritional supplementation, lifestyle, and dietary changes. And I don't really like the word diet because it implies weight loss, and sometimes that's a goal of our clients and sometimes it's not. But let's go through these one by one. Certainly, diet has a huge and tremendous impact on your health and well-being. After all, it's where we get all of the nutrients that build our cells and build our tissues up, but it's where we derive all the factors that actually allow us to produce energy. So the diet is really more like medicine. One of the ancient philosophers actually stated that we should let food be our medicine and let medicine be our food. And I completely agree with that. So typically with our plan and our approach, there's some dietary changes and manipulation that has to happen to avoid eating things that are perhaps aggravating the immune system. Maybe they're pro-inflammatory and causing problems in that particular respect. But dietary manipulation is a great tool for us, especially when the diet isn't the greatest. We also have some potential to create lifestyle changes, and that we can break that down into a couple of basic categories. For example, adopting a healthier, more active lifestyle, including exercise, but also looking for areas of chronic stressors in your life, whether they're related to work or relationships or whatever. We can point you in the direction of how you start making changes in those categories of your life to actually help improve your health and well-being. And then finally, we have nutritional supplementation. And in essence, what we're trying to do with this entire plan is we're using diagnostic testing appropriately interpreted to identify the biochemical defects or derangements that are producing the symptoms and the problems in your body. And we're matching those defects to the known physiological effects of nutritional and natural compounds. So for example, if we can identify that you have a specific type of anemia or blood sugar problem, we know that there are certain nutrients and herbal compounds that will have a beneficial effect on those particular problems. And this is where we start to build an individualized plan that is unique to you and may be completely different than the next person who comes in with perhaps the same complaint. I may have 3 or 4 people come in a row with the same complaint of fatigue and insomnia, but I may end up treating each one of those completely differently based on the problems that we find in their blood chemistry. The bottom line is the plan is focused around these three cornerstone aspects: diet, lifestyle changes, and of course nutritional supplementation. So that brings us to the process. How do you get started? If all of this sounds good to you, we have to have a starting point, and that of course starts with an initial consultation. We'll spend an hour going through an in-depth history, far greater than you've probably ever experienced before within the medical community. And primarily what we're looking for are called patterns and pivot points. Now, patterns are recurring themes, and oftentimes they point to a consistent or chronic problem within one particular system. So for example, somebody may say to me, well, my whole life I've had stomach problems, or my whole life since I started my female cycle, I've actually had hormonal symptoms and PMS. And these are patterns or recurring themes that occur over broad periods of time that tell us that something's not working with that system. We better pay attention to it. The other thing we're looking for are what we call pivot points. And pivot points are events or compressed periods of time where something changed for the better or for the worse. So again, for example, we have plenty of women come in who tell us that most of their health complaints came after delivering their child. Maybe it wasn't their first child, or maybe it was the second child. Or they may say, you know what, I felt great while I was pregnant, but when I delivered, then everything kind of hit the fan. So these pivot points and these patterns really help us to understand the context of your health history and how that relates to where you are today, but gives us very significant clues about where to look for the major problems. And that's a significant advantage with this essential medicine approach. And out of that in-depth history and looking for patterns and pivot points, that allows us to devise what I call the diagnostic strategy. And it always starts with a functional blood chemistry analysis, looking for health and well-being, focused on where we're losing homeostasis, including, of course, an eye towards where things may have developed into that disease category, but hopefully they haven't. And that's a basic requirement for all of my new clients. In fact, I won't treat anybody without a current blood workup. But we also find that in many cases we have to go beyond that because, of course, blood chemistry analysis doesn't show us everything. It shows us a tremendous amount. But in some cases we may need to go into maybe salivary hormone testing. where we actually look at your stress hormones, cortisol and DHEA. Depending on the scenario, we may want to take a look at the gender hormones, looking at things like estrogen and progesterone and testosterone to see if they are imbalanced or contributing to the problem and need to be addressed. Another common test that we'll run on a fairly frequent basis is a stool analysis. And this goes back to what we were saying in our fundamental priorities. Priority number 4 being the immune system, and most of the immune system being in the gastrointestinal system. Looking at a stool analysis and looking for not only pathogens or things that may be causing an infection in the gut, but also looking at things like healthy bacteria, what we call probiotics, which are an essential part of the gut-based immune system and an overall healthy environment. And we may even expand that out and start looking at factors that relate to digestion and absorption, where we can see markers that show that maybe your enzyme production isn't correct, and that's something that we may need to address. So after the initial consultation, we come up with the diagnostic strategy. And after we get test results back, then we meet for what we call a report of findings. And that typically lasts for about an hour. It depends on how many tests we have to review and how long it takes and the question and answer session. Because again, remember, one of our primary focuses is to help make sure that we give you answers. You need to understand what your problems are so you can understand what's to be done about it. So in that 1 hour report of findings, give or take some time, we review your results, we deliver our best recommendations, and we actually ask you, how aggressive do you want to be with this? So for example, if we find that somebody has 4 or 5 issues to deal with, we try to go through a system of prioritization. I have some clients say, I want to be very aggressive and I want the greatest results in the shortest period of time. And that tells me that we have to treat things on an aggressive schedule. And some people will say, well, I want to take things a little bit more slowly, but I want to make sure that we actually get results. And that means that we may alter our recommendations or the totality of what we're doing in any one given time period. And of course, this is where we decide on a course of action. And it's not me as a dictator saying this is what you will do. This is a discussion and almost a negotiation where I tell you what's wrong with you, tell you what I think we should do about that, and then together we decide on the course of action. And the final part of that process is, of course, is following up. And typically I'll do formal follow-ups on a monthly basis, and we'll have regular email contact and feedback throughout that month. We'll just have one formal session in that month period of time. And I really don't like to create treatment plans that go beyond 3 months. I feel like my ability to look into the future, so to speak, beyond that is very limited. But we have to allow enough time for things to change, but make sure that we don't go so far into the future that we lose sight of what our initial goals are. So my recommendations typically fall within the 1 to 3 month time frame. And then, of course, at the end of that period, whether it's 1 or 3 months, we can decide to continue on based on your progress. So if at the end of, for example, 2 months, you're 95% better and you're good to go and you've got a good solid lifestyle and your diet's working and you're down to basic supplementation, then great. We'll just check with you maybe 3 months or 6 months down the road. But if at the end of 2 months you find that things are better, but they're just not where you need to be, then we continue on until we get you to that point. But just remember that once I set up your treatment plan, I just don't disappear and fade into the background. We try to keep support and keep encouragement going because I understand that this is a hard process. It's not very easy to change your diet. It's not very easy to change your lifestyle. And sometimes it's not easy to follow on a supplementation program. So I'm here to be as much your coach as I am to be your physician. And in reality, I don't see much of a distinction between the two of those things. So I know we've spent quite a bit of time going over the philosophy and the priorities and the planning and the process. Hopefully this was informative for you, and I really do hope that you get an opportunity to send me an email or give me a call and give me the opportunity to help find answers, results, and hope for you.